Hi, guys. This is Ellie with Journeys with Ellie, and I am so excited that you're here with us today. I'm going to start with the channeled message for today, and it says, "Thank you, Divine Feminine, for showing up. We need you. We need you to do the work, the healing, the rising. It is an important time. You are here because you are chosen, and you chose to be a leader, a starseed, a light worker, an alchemist, a healer. You are doing the work for generations, past, present, and future. You are doing the work for your children and their children, and for all the generations to come. Be diligent, stay strong. I know that at times it feels so hard, but you are worthy and you are worth it. You are a channel for greatness. This is the era of the goddess rising. Welcome." So I want to welcome Holly Hope today. I'm so
Hello.
excited to have you. Why
Thank
don't
you.
you go
Thank
ahead
you.
and introduce yourself and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So the official title is an integrative healing arts practitioner and master of sacred sound therapy. So what it means is basically I connect with spirit guides to help people identify their emotional crap, their physical blockages, and we move it through a number of different modalities, and especially with sacred sound. So yes, I love it.
Beautiful.
And I love that our backgrounds match. I'm just
I
noticing we have the moons.
know.
I have the moons. We have the drums and the feathers and the.
My feathers are right over here.
Hey, so
So
sister.
I know. I feel like ever since I met you, it was like instant. This is definitely one of my sisters. So thanks for showing up. Holly, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your healing work looks like and um kind of what it is that you do that people could expect if they reach out to you.
Oh, yes. So I do a number of things, but ultimately, my mission statement is to be a beacon of hope and light. I came from a very abusive background and lots of trauma. And after years of not finding a way to resolve it and have permanent change, I ended up finding my own modality and then adding pieces with other tools. Just as we evolve, I feel like we always are adding new things. And so people usually come to me because there's some type of block. There's some thing that's coming up and it's like, "Oh, again with this and again with this and again with this." And what we do when we dive in is we do individual sessions where we identify what I call negative perspectives. So these are the distortions that we hold about ourselves and other people, whether it's like allergies to emotions or addictive cycles emotionally, or even physical body shutdown. And when we dive in, we find those negative perspectives and we find the emotions with it. And then we understand the mental patterns. Once we have those, then we heal it from the emotional body and the energy body and also the physical body. I do individual sessions. However, I really just absolutely love when we get together in groups. So we do sacred healing ceremonies where we incorporate drums and community, and you're able to be witnessed in what you're working on clearing and also receive that extra support from the community. And then we do full immersive healing retreats, which will go into places in the jungle, or sometimes we're local in the US, and we dive into understanding the balance in ourselves, the masculine, feminine, the wild woman, letting her come out, sensual awakening for couples and singles, and really embodying that whole piece. And it's been really delightful because I've been able to expand, and I now teach people how to have their own sacred healing drum ceremonies and making the sacred drums and the ancient medicine that comes with those, and also how to open up their intuitive gifts to do exactly what I do. I feel like we're coming to an age where that expansion and that movement has already been taking place the last few years, and we're finally ready to look at ourselves and look at what needs to be healed and open up our gifts so that we can support each other in the community. So yeah, that's we do a lot of neural rewiring, and we do nervous system resetting. So there's a lot of physical, emotional, spiritual, all kind of together in that full healing dynamic. So I really love it.
Oh, beautiful. I cannot wait to experience all of that. The whole everything you're saying, I'm like, I want that and that and that. Sign me up, sign me up, sign me up. So I love that. And then I think that something we could do is if you guys are interested in joining something like that, then comment below. And then maybe if we could get something together, either here in Utah or somewhere near us, we could put something together after this comes out. So
Yeah,
that'll be exciting.
absolutely.
So tell me, what does healing mean to you?
For me, healing means that we're allowing ourselves to go all the way to the core of whatever's been coming up. So I know for me, I would go to talk therapy or I'd go receive Reiki healing. And it was like these little bubbles that were all on the surface that were driving me nuts would be wiped clean. And I'd feel so good and so clear for about 2 weeks. And then more bubbles would come. And then we clear those. And I'd feel really good for a while. And then more bubbles would come. And it got me in a state where I felt like I was always needing extra support and always something to fix. And it's understanding if we can get to the bubble machine or that core piece, because usually the core part of us that's causing all of this friction to come up is something that's so embedded yet so familiar that we allow it to keep playing out. And it applies to all the areas of our lives. So for example, if I have this core nugget and I have like an allergy to feeling wanted because, every time I feel wanted, people take from me or I end up getting hurt or they want too much and I'm already stretched too thin, then that feeling wanted can show up with money issues. It can show up with relationship issues. It can show up with even our connection to spirit, because why would God or why would spirit want to talk to me? And who am I? And so if we can get to that core and release that and not be afraid of it, and not shame ourselves for having it, because we all have traumas. We all have things that overwhelm our brain and cause us to shut down and cause us to play small and withhold from ourselves. So it's that raw opening of being able to look at yourself fully. And also being supported in that. And that's where the group comes in. That's where even the individual sessions come in. If it's just one person that hears you, sees the emotional crap and looks at it, goes, and it's okay because it's going. And for me, that's like the deepest part of healing, is being able to look at that and then do something about it without trying to hold back or pretend it's not there or blame it on somebody else. And then whatever steps necessary to do the work to move through that. That's the other piece. There's a lot of people who say, oh, here's my crap. Here's what we need to work on. Here's the problem. But then they don't do the follow-up work to change it in the mind and the body and the energy. And so then it just comes back because it's now an old program, an old pattern that we pass on generationally. So I love that in the beginning, you mentioned the healing the generations to come, because it's so true. And it's not for our ancestors that we heal, it's for ourselves. But by healing that, it heals us and it heals those who come from us. So yeah, for me, it's that full immersive piece of diving into all of it without any judgment, just as if you're watching a movie. It's like, oh, outside of myself, this is what my cute, wonderful, delicious human has created. Bless her heart. I love her so much. Now let's do something different.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes being human can be such a struggle, but it's all about the wiring and rewiring and the doing and the undoing. And that is the beauty in it, is that we do have these tools. We do have this medicine. We do have this available to us. And that is what doing the work is and looks like. It's not always pretty, but it's always worth it.
I love the memes that are like, here's my spirit, what I thought my spiritual awakening would be. And it's like, oh, rainbows and sunshine. What it actually looks like, in a corner. Because that's true. It's the unraveling, it's the primal ugliness, but it's also so beautiful and delicious when somebody can allow themselves to go that deep.
Yeah,
and really shift it.
It is the rainbows and butterflies and all of that. Once you've moved through that, and even in the moving through that, it's like, oh wow, that can be really it can feel like that, but for the most part it's going to be like, holy shit.
Mhm.
um yeah, tell me what healing does not look like for you.
Ooh, I don't think I've ever been asked that. What does healing not look like? Oh, I think for me, one of the biggest, I'm going to say irritants. I'm going to use that word. Is when people are like, oh, you just got to push through and you just got to fake it till you make it. And if you move forward, then the healing will come, then the emotion will come. For me, that is not it at all. That's actually distortion, because you're showing up and pretending to be something you're not, which creates more distortion. It creates more dark energy, it creates more suffering, because it's in that open, authentic, transparent vulnerability that we're able to not just heal ourselves, but heal others. I have people tell me all the time, I just love being around you. And I feel like so much of me heals just in hearing your healing experience, just in being in your presence and sinking to that vibration. But to pretend we have it all together when we don't, and to push ourselves into our healing, I think is almost like, my daughter's about to have a baby, like literally any minute. And I go to the birth thing, you can't push a baby out before they're ready to come. And because otherwise you end up not getting what you were doing all this work for. And so healing isn't forcing ourselves to be at a level we're not. It's not comparing ourselves with other people's journey, but allowing ourselves to be open and raw and say, the unhealed parts of me say this. I acknowledge that there's parts that are unhealed and I'm working on those. And you have parts that you're probably working on too. And so I think it's in that anytime we are not transparent in our healing, it is going to block that healing journey. Now, there is a difference between being open and authentic and dumping all your emotional vomit on people. I'm not saying dump all your emotional vomit. It's okay to say, I'm healing this piece still. I'm still learning this piece. I'm still moving, because it gives that full permission for other people to do the same. And I have to say, every time I've been vulnerable enough to say, I'm healing this piece in me and I haven't figured it out yet, and I'm still processing it, and I'm being patient and graceful with myself, because I don't want to push myself harder than I can handle. And every time I've done that, oh, I'm all goosebumpy. Literally every single time, there's been multiple people that I've shared that with who are going through something similar. And then I'm able to see myself through their eyes, and they're able to see themselves through my eyes. And even though we have a common hurt or wound that we're healing, we don't have to sit in the suffering, and we don't have to suffer in silence and alone and do it all ourselves without any help, and I'll just figure it out. But we're able to find pieces that can help to add momentum to our healing, rather than us trying to force it or push it or hide it. Because that's the thing, is we all have unhealed parts. We all do.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of time when those come up. But it's our relationships, both friendships, coworkers, and lovers, that are going to trigger those. And once they get triggered, then we can work on them. But if we hold ourselves back from admitting our journey, then we're also holding ourselves from being triggered by those people we love that would love us and support us through it, or that are not in alignment with us. And through that trigger, we can finally see it. So somebody who is able to support that can come into our world. So, yeah.
Oh, beautiful. That was so well put.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot that we could go into with that. And I think that for me, with my experiences, you're either going to find people that are like kind of the toxic positivity, where it's like, you can't feel like that, because if you feel like that, then it's just going to be worse, or you're going to get more of it, or things like that. Or the whole, well, that's just how I am. That's who I am. You have to either take it or leave it.
You have to tiptoe over my pains and my triggers and change yourself so that I can keep this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I got to the point in my life where that just doesn't work for me. And a lot of those friendships and a lot of those types of relationships, I weaned those out of my life. And luckily, because now I have a really good support group, and even just a new me, and like how I show up now. And I was just talking to my daughter yesterday about how I'm in a phase where I'm ready. I feel like I've been doing a lot of work, a lot of self-work for the last 2 years. And I'm like, I feel like I'm finally at a stage where I'm ready to have new growth and go into a new phase and re-experience like relationships and some of the other things that I haven't had for a while, because there's a part of me that's interested, like, well, what are my triggers? Where is the healing? Like, what else? I reached a point where I feel like I did as much as I'm gonna do on my own. And I'm ready to learn more about myself, and like how cool that we can do that.
Yeah. Well, and I think I had a similar experience several years ago. I realized I was sitting there with spirit and I was in meditation, and I journal when I'm with spirit, because for me, it puts it into a tactile form that I can come back to, and I can understand what I'm receiving. And so I'm sitting there journaling, and spirit's like, okay, it's time. Like, you have healed as much from these toxic relationships that you were in by yourself. You can't go any further.
Yeah.
Because right now you're in this little bubble of it's just you, and no relationship means it's just you and you're never going to get triggered. But
Yeah.
it's time to evolve. It's time to upgrade. And I remember sitting with it and being like, okay, we can do this. And they're like, yeah, and it's going to hurt a lot. And there's going to be a lot of stuff that comes up. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to, but yes, I do. Okay. Yes, I do. And, in that relationship is what evolved into a deeper understanding of how the masculine and feminine dynamics work. Because, yep, I got triggered a lot, and I learned a lot, and I felt such deep love and expansion and all these beautiful experiences. So there was plenty of good with it, and it definitely did outweigh the bad. But there, with those little nuggets of friction, I was able to identify, like, oh, this isn't divine masculine. This is toxic masculine. And oh, this is me showing up in my shadow feminine. This isn't how I want to show up in a relationship. This is how I thought I love to love. And this is how I thought I like to show up. But actually, that's just an old program. Oh, this is a response. It's trauma fear. So I'm like changing who I am in order to not have the same scenario of hurts from the past. And so just the ability to dive into so much of ourselves. But then every time we do, and I know you're finding this in your journey, is every time we do, we dive in deeper, we find all those gooey parts, we heal those parts, and then we share what we found while we were in there. And so withdrawing for a time and going deep within and healing, there's a lot of shame that I've heard people say around that. And it's like, no, it's a season. Just like winter comes, you dig in your roots, you're not giving anymore, you're digging in, you're going deep. And then when spring comes again and you have all the nourishment and understanding you could possibly hold, it's time to bloom into blossom, and it's time to spread those branches and share that wisdom. And then after a time, you'll go back in and say, hold on, I'm going to get some more. Here's some more information. Here's some more discoveries. And then the other people who are doing the same things are like, oh, look at my branches. Here's my fruit. Have some of this, have some of that. And then we have collective consciousness that's up leveling and diving deeper in a whole society. So that's exactly what we want. And everybody says they want it. And that's how we do it, is on an individual basis, going deep within and then sharing what we discover while we were within. So I love that you're opening up that piece and allowing yourself to go to the next phase, going, okay, this is going to be so beautiful. Probably also a lot of my unhealed parts will show, but I'm all for it, because that's what we're here for.
Yeah. Because I feel like I don't know myself in this person has not been in a relationship for a few years. So it's like, okay, well, what's going to show up? How am I going to react and act? And, I feel like it'll be good. And also I'm going to learn, and, we'll see what shows up. So
well, and even when we look at relationships, why we even have them in the first place is to grow and evolve with somebody. It's not to, the end of your story is when you get married and you have the white picket fence, and I've had all those things, and it was like, okay, I'm here. But then what happens is the relationship grows stagnant because the growth stops, or one person grows and then the other person doesn't know how to relate, which is why we started doing the retreats, so that both partners can know how to relate and have all the same vocabulary and jargon. But as we evolve in that relationship, they always grow until they're complete. And so some of them, they will last, a date or two. And it's like, ooh, I got a lot of information of what I don't want. That's complete.
Yeah.
Other ones will last a few years and then grow to completion, and we shift and they shift. And it's okay that they complete and they end. And then ideally we have them complete when one partner passes away. And then that relationship still grows to completion. Even if you both go at the same time and you flip onto the other side and you're like, oh, we're in spirit. That old relationship that you had is now complete. There's a new one that's being formed with the same soul. And so when we look at relationships, it's like, okay, this is going to be great. I'm aligned. And as long as I'm living aligned, you're supposed to show up for me. Wonderful. Now, where are we going to grow? Oh, look, we completed. You're weird. Never mind. I'm not going on a second date, or it might be your forever person, until completion.
Well, and I love that you touched on that, because I want to touch base with that, is I think that sometimes there are people who will say, well, just because your relationships only last a few years, or you've done this many relationships, and it's not one 10-year relationship or one 20-year relationship or one relationship ever. Um, I want you to like our audience to know that there is no shame in that. It is 100% okay for you to gain everything that you're going to gain from that relationship and then move on from that. You don't have to stay in a relationship that isn't serving you anymore.
Well, and I think it applies to all relationships. I have a client of mine who her and her husband each saw me individually and then together as a couple. And as we dove in to do some healing work, she relayed that she'd been married to 4 different versions of her husband. Like there was when they first got married, and then there was when he was an alcoholic, and then he had gotten a really bad accident. And so then she had to care for him and he couldn't walk and, broken bones and all those things. And then she has the version now. And so, if a relationship comes to completion, it's not always that the person is leaving. Sometimes it's the death and the rebirth of the relationship.
Yeah.
And even my beautiful daughter, who's about to go into mamahood, we were talking one day and she said, and people ask, because I was pregnant at 14 with her. And so people ask all the time, how was that growing up with your mom? And how was it growing? And they meet me now and they're like, wow, you must be so in tune and you love the drums and all these things. And she's like, it'd be hard to answer that question because I kind of had 4 different moms growing up. Like I had the young mom just surviving and leaving domestic
Yeah.
violence relationships. I had the very religious, perfect picket fence mom. I had the newly single mom trying to find herself. And then I have this version. She's like, so it's hard to say what it was like. I can't answer it because I had 4 different versions. And I remember when I first heard that, it like set me back. I felt a little bit of guilt. And I even said like, oh, I'm sorry. I feel really guilty about that. She's like, why? And I was like, oh, you're right. Why? Because I grew and I evolved. And you've been different people. You had your toddler phase, you had your,
Yeah.
your elementary school phase, you had your mean teenager phase, you had your newly married phase, and now you're going into your mom phase. And each of those you're showing up differently. So allowing ourselves, that's another piece to healing, is allowing ourselves to fully shed all the old and show up as somebody different. And it's okay if people leave our lives that don't like the new version, because it's more about alignment than it is who's right, who's wrong, who's bad, who's good. And actually in my meditation this morning, I got this beautiful little nugget of wisdom. Let's see if I can remember it. Sometimes we feel lost when we go through a huge awakening and opening and activation, or when we shed things that are old. And it's not always a matter of feeling lost, but sometimes the new parts we found don't fit the old. And so it gives us this displacement feeling like, I don't know who I am anymore. It's like, yeah, you do. You know exactly who you are. It just doesn't fit into who you've always been. It doesn't fit
Yeah.
into the older version, which is something to be celebrated because it shows that you're growing. It shows that you're evolving. Like it would be so awful if somebody came to me and they're like, Hollie, you're exactly the same as you've always been. Like, haven't seen you in 10 years. You haven't changed a bit. And I'm like, well, I mean, vanity wise, I'll take it. But other than vanity, and but I would hate if they're like, oh, you're still in the exact same place. Your life
Oh,
looks
no.
exactly the same. Like that would crush me, because
Yeah.
to not grow is stagnancy, which is actually what happens to water when it's stagnant. It's rot, it's decay, it's yucky. I mean, yeah, some blue lotuses can go up through the mud, but unless I have new lotuses, I don't want to be stagnant.
Yeah. Absolutely. I can relate with that. I would rather be continually moving and changing and shifting and growing I cannot imagine being an old version of myself. Even if I thought I was the best version of myself at that time, every time I hit a new level, I'm like, oh, I have never been this me before. And I am so excited.
I love it. Well, and even when people talk about like, where do you see your life in 5 years? And I'm like, I stopped putting an expectation on it because it
Yeah.
was limiting me.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, you know what? I know she's going to grow and evolve, and I know my passions are still going to come forward, but I may change my mind of what I want to do or who I want to be. And I can look at myself 5 years ago and go, oh, honey, if only you knew. So why would I limit it
Yeah.
by saying, this is who I'm going to be? because I have no idea. I haven't met her yet.
Yeah.
So she's still growing, and it's not about finding ourselves or becoming what we're destined to be. It's about creating who we want to be. And those wants change based on the relationships we have that go, ooh, that is not my preference. I'm going to
Yeah.
shift over here. This is actually what I want. And we don't realize that through all these pains and all these moments where there's friction and challenges, that's shaping and molding who we actually want to be and showing us who we want to be and who we want to be around and what we want to experience. So it's actually a really good thing to be triggered. It's really, really good.
Yeah, because sometimes what you think you wanted, when it shows up, you're like, oh, well, not like that.
Oh, I didn't mean it that way.
Yeah, that's not what I was thinking. So let's move on to another question. Let's see. Tell me, what was one of the catalysts to your healing?
Ooh, which one? For me, I grew up in a very abusive home. And so I didn't really have a break where I didn't have trauma and pain coming in. So healing's always been part of that. Like I always hoped that things would get better. I mean, literally my birth middle name is Hope, Hollie Hope. Like, so I always hoped. It was just always there. But I went right into abusive relationships. And then when I got married, it was like, okay, we're going to go into this box and find our happiness. And I actually had, it was funny because even as a little girl, horrible things would happen. And I remember sweet Oprah. People even sometimes call me Hollie Oprah because of this. And it's, my mom always had the talk shows on. And I remember Oprah would always have these painful stories, you know, these horrific things that had happened to people, and she'd interview them. And one thing that I always found was how inspiring the stories were. And so for me, even when I was a child and I would hear these stories, I'd be like, wow, that's really powerful. And so then when horrible things happened to me, I would say, oh, this is going to be a really great story for Oprah one day. And so I always had that like glimmer of things have got to get better. But as far as opening up like the full healing gifts of what I do now and really finding those answers, I think one of the catalysts was about 16, 17 years ago. I was a professional makeup artist, and I had this business that was just thriving, but it would thrive one month and be like zeros the next month, and thrive one month and be like zeros, which was fine because I would just carry things over for the next month. But it was really frustrating to always be like, Zoom, stop,
Yeah.
Zoom, stop. And I wanted to heal that. And a friend of mine said, Hollie, I think you have an issue around being successful. I
Mm.
think you have a block there. I think you have a fear of success. And I went, no, I love it. I'm working so hard towards it. And I ended up connecting with an energy healer over the phone. And this was before you could see who you were talking to. So literally it was like silent for most of it. And it was really kind of awkward. And I remember thinking, this is a bunch of weirdness. Like, this just doesn't make sense. And I'm wasting my time. And she's not going to know anything. And I have way too much crap for her to even be able to pick it all apart. And then she stops and she's like, I have this weird sensation in my body. And she described like this pulsing heart rate. She was hot and uncomfortable and a little bit of nausea. And she's like, I think I just need to pause for a second because something's off. And I was like, that's the very same sensations I'm feeling in my body. What is this stuff?
Yeah.
And after that, I began mentoring with her because I really, really wanted to have the healing, but it felt like it was so tedious and there was just so much work that was there that needed to be done. It wasn't going deep enough. And so I was like, well, I'll just learn how to do it and I'll just work on myself every single day, clearing things and moving things. And we can finally get to a place where I'm good enough and I'm stable and I've fixed myself enough, because I still felt very broken. And I ended up learning how to do it. And then people found me that needed me. And they would even say point blank, did you ever have just one thing you couldn't get past? And I was like, okay, come to my house. Don't tell anybody I do this really weird thing. And, that's actually how my modality developed, because they would come back with insecurity and insecurity and insecurity. And I'm like, why is she still having all these things around insecurity? Didn't we get to the core? Didn't we get deep enough? And then spirit would say, oh, no, she's actually allergic to feeling confident. And here's her justification of why she doesn't want to feel it. And then we were able to finally get to that core and clear it. And then as I continue to do that, anytime we start rising to help people raise their vibration, we get a rise too. And so then it just got deeper and deeper and deeper. And I started really opening and activating so many parts of myself and learning different healing modalities and traveling the world and learning from different beautiful, beautiful healers that were just so generous in sharing deep wisdoms with me so that I was able to see how deep I can go.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my theme now. When something comes up, it's like, ooh, how deep can we go? How big can we get? You know, and of course the drums came in there about halfway through, and it was just as if they've always been there and really activated a lot in me. So yeah, that's kind of how it found. But it was funny because at first I was like, but I'm not intuitive. I'm not spiritual. I'm the one person that God doesn't speak to. So I go to other people and go to my religion to have them tell me what God wants with my life, because I really felt like I was mute when it came to spiritual gifts. But the thing I didn't realize was I just didn't understand the language, and the language that everybody used didn't match what I was feeling in my body or the information I was getting. And so it was just a matter of vocabulary and understanding. So yeah, it was really powerful. And then along the way, I've even had beautiful spirit beings that have visited me and given me more information and taught me. And so that deep connection to go from feeling completely broken and cut off to feeling loved enough to have information shared with you so that you can pass it on. That definitely is a call to heal anything that's not in alignment with that high vibration, right? So yeah, it's been really a beautiful journey. Now it's like my whole life.
Yeah.
So, obviously, but
I think that happens, right? I mean, there's even times now that I'm even in doing these interviews, I'm like, well, what do I even have to bring to the world? You know? And I know that I do a lot of work. I do a lot of energy work. I have many, many, many tools. And there's times that even I can still doubt myself and doubt my abilities and doubt the messages that I'm getting. And so I think that that's really important for everyone else to know as they're going through their journey, that can still happen, that is still normal, that there's times where you're going to be doing it on your own, and there's times that you're going to have mentors in your life that can assist you through. And I think as long as you continue working and searching and find the right one for you, I think that is a lot to do with this journey, with Journeys with Ellie, what I'm doing now, and interviewing so many different healers and modalities and whatever that looks like, because it doesn't look like just one, you know, and what resonates with someone doesn't resonate with someone else, and the vocabulary might not fit, but then one day they're going to find that one that does click with them. And I'm excited to, to provide those tools and those pathways, even if it's just connecting you to someone you can understand, or that where
Well,
you
and it also
felt,
depends on, I think, what you're healing as well. So if I'm healing something that's more of a physical trauma, I'm going to need a physical type healing. I'm
yes,
going to need to feel those sensations in my body. And if it's something that's more of an emotional or a visual, then I'm going to need a different type of healing. And so it's not always even just personality based, but a lot of times it depends on what you're clearing. And I love the term, it takes a village. And so even though you may unroot some things with one person, you can go to another person for a deeper layer or a deeper piece. Like there's a lot of modalities that I don't do, and it's like, ooh, I can do this piece. Like I can do medium work where loved ones that have passed away step in. Now I only work with that if we're clearing something specifically and they step in to support that clearing. But if somebody says, hey, I have a loved one that passed away, I want to connect with them, I decline and I send them to somebody I know and trust, because I know that even though we can do it, it's not what lights me up. And
Yeah.
it's best to do the things that light you up and to work with the people that at that moment light you up. And once you've healed with them, then they should move on. And so like I have very few clients who come to me on a regular basis. Usually we do 1 to 3 sessions and we get all those deep nuggets out, and then they move on because they've healed everything that resonates with my highest vibration of healing. And it's time for them to look at things on a different angle or work on something else, or maybe to learn and activate and put in new gifts. And
Yeah.
so it's allowing that process of every time, it's who is in alignment at the time for what you're working on is the most important question to ask. And I really love what you mentioned about, the self-doubt. And sometimes it's like, oh, is this really working? And I teach this with the practitioners because every once in a while, I'll be working on someone and we'll have like this, especially in the red tent ceremonies with the women's retreats, because it's primal. It is wild. And there's usually one moment where you're like, this is a bunch of crazy. Like, y'all see what's going on here? We have somebody screaming over here, somebody vomiting over here, and literally we're just using sound. That's all we're doing. And, and I'm sitting there like, this shit works. This is so weird. Okay, let's go back in. And what I like to really address with those moments is we sometimes shame those and we think, oh no, I must doubt myself because those thoughts come in. No, that's your conscious mind keeping you in check, keeping you from losing it, keeping you from being one of the people who are way out there that you're afraid to be. And so it's actually what anchors us back into this 3D. So when those are coming up, it means you just jumped somewhere else. And then your conscious mind is like, remember, this is the reality that we're working with. This is the human experience that we're working in. So it's like a fail safe or like a little safety net to say, hey, we're still here. We're still sane. Okay, let's go back in. And it's very, very normal, but most people don't talk about it because it's like, well, yeah, I know after all these years doing this, I know how deep it works and I know what's possible. I've seen it over and over again. But even still, like last Tuesday, I was working on somebody and I was doing their nervous system and drumming them, and like once with the nervous system and then once while drumming them, it was like, it's crazy that this works. Like I had a client and her hands turned white and she started getting like the claw fingers. And I was literally just had her on my massage table and I was just working her. And she went into like a full intense physical response. And I'm like, it's literally just sound, words, crystals, and nervous system. And watching her response, she's like, this is the same response I get when I have massive panic attacks and I get hospitalized. And I was like, yeah, we're moving. Your body's responding, and a non-liquor would be like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? But it's allowing ourselves to go there and allowing ourselves to say, hey, but now your humanness is checking in and you're now matching it. This thing that you're releasing is what's causing those panic attacks, which is why your body is showing you, hey, this is how we show up. And so having those check-ins, having those moments where we evaluate ourselves and, okay, am I still being authentic? Is that still serving? Have I lost my mind? Like, having those check-ins are a good thing. It's what makes this work so powerful because we're asking those questions and we're looking at it. We're not just la, 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 la. I just have to keep going and pretend that I don't feel and think the things I'm thinking. It's like, oh, thank you, conscious mind, for anchoring me back into this reality so I can incorporate this beautiful medicine here. So next time you have those thoughts, just be like, oh, thank you, conscious mind. Now let's go back in.
Well, and the thing too is like I have had experiences that are just so amazing and so beautiful, so I 100% trust, but there's still a human aspect to it, and I just think that that's pretty normal. And I also, the other thing I want to touch on is sometimes when we are coming into our intuition and our gifts and things like that, a lot of those times that's when you're like, am I just crazy? Because you're all of a sudden feeling new things and hearing new things, and your abilities change, your perceptions change, and sometimes that can feel a little bit scary and overwhelming, and you're going to think that you're the only one going through it or that you're going crazy. And I just want to let you know that you're not alone in that journey.
That's why sharing is important.
Yes. Yes. So, what is a resource that you could share with someone that is just barely starting their journey? Maybe they're just getting a little curious, or they heard something and they want to know more about that. What are some a resource that you could share, or a little nugget that you could share with someone that is just starting their journey?
I think the biggest thing is to document. That's why I'm such a big journaler. Document the things that do come through, document the experiences you have, document the miracles that you experience, because you'll find that there's patterns. And especially if you feel like the sensation's opening up something in you, to be able to see, oh, you know what, last time that opened up, this happened. I wonder if that's happening again. And to be able to look at it with curiosity and allowing yourself to see that everything isn't exactly the same way for each person, but be curious about yourself. Oh, I'm curious if this is all in my head or if this is spirit coming through. And then being able to have some type of record. And if you're just starting out, I do have a free course on aligning your spiritual gifts. It's a basic course. It's one that I did a few years ago. And Spirit said, these are like the steps for everybody, no matter where they're at, to understand that they're not crazy, and to understand that there are different ways we receive intuition and empathic gifts. And like, there's 11 different types of empaths that I found. And so all of those are in there in detail, but just start reflecting and being curious about what it is that is your unique gifts, or what it is that isn't your unique gifts, and
Yeah.
just allowing that curiosity, like, I wonder if this, I wonder if that. And then I also think having resources like you, so that you can reach out and say, hey, am I crazy? Like those safe people that you can say, hey, can I just run this by you? So often we have these deep experiences and we go to somebody who's never experienced it and we're like, tell me your thoughts. They're going to tell us we're crazy. So rather than giving information and those sacred parts of us to people we know haven't experienced it, to be selective in who we share with and how we share, especially when we're just opening it up. We don't want to have somebody who's going to burst our bubble. We want somebody who's going to encourage us and at least understands it, even if they're in the same boat, like, oh girl, I don't know. I mean, I had the weirdest thing happen. Let me tell you my story. Because that takes the pressure off, and it again allows that authentic connection, so that we can see, oh, I'm actually safe to be seen, and I'm safe to explore this, and I'm safe to be curious about this. And we don't always have to have all the answers. It's just that curiosity that says, well, could this be? What's possible? And that taking the pressure off of ourselves.
Yes. Taking the pressure off.
Yeah.
So here's a question that just popped out. Are there any dangers? What is the definition of energy work, and are there any dangers, if any?
Ooh, that's a really good question. So energy work, and it depends on how you're using it, because technically receiving information for somebody is energy work. There's a few things that I really am very, very cautious about. One of those is tuning in or healing someone or offering energy work to somebody who did not audibly, physically give you permission. I've had people that I've trained who said, oh, no, I just tune into their higher self and ask if I have permission, and then I do it. And I was like, no. I'm like, do you know how pissed I would be if I am working on my healing journey? I know where I'm at, and I have things that I know are unhealed, but I'm working on them. And you came in saying, you know better, and talked to my higher self and went over my head.
Yeah.
That's a violation. And so honoring boundaries and not violating somebody else's healing experience, because you could actually cause more harm and distortion and confusion, because now your energy is muddled into their world, and they were working on something, but now your shit is coming through in what they're working on, and it adds confusion. Especially because there's so many of us that are empaths. And actually we're all born with the gift to be an empath. So, you know, when people are like, oh, well, I'm an empath, I'm one of the rare ones. And like, you're not rare, you just didn't block it. Good job.
Yeah.
You know, it's like sunblock. You know, we all have access to the sun, but some of us wear sleeves, some of us wear sunblock, and some of us just toast it up. And so it's the same way with this beautiful gift of being able to feel what other people are feeling. And so asking permission, and if they didn't say verbally, you have my permission, yes, go ahead, then that means you don't have it. If they're like, yeah, okay, if you want, that doesn't mean you have permission. That means they're people pleasing. And so being very clear in when you have permission and when you don't. But energy work is the ability to tune into another's like sixth sense, another frequency. So it's like this whole pile of information that you're able to receive that's not spoken and not seen. It's more felt. When I really like the analogy of, energy and electricity, because if I were to touch an electric fence, that electric current goes through the fence and into me. But then if I touch the electric fence and then I touch you, it just goes right through me. I don't even feel the electric current and it zaps you. And so energy work is the same way, where we're being a mediator for the mediator, whether that's, if you believe in Christ, whether that's Christ energy, whether that's collective conscious energy, like we're the in-between person for spirit saying, hey, this is what they want. This is where they're at. Zoom, and we're able to shift that. In some of the energy healing that I'm certified in, I'm like, I don't like the word certified. Can you tell? I'm like, as I roll my eyes, certified in. I mean, I love being properly trained 100%, but you can be certified in something and not fully understand it.
Yeah.
But there's one where you actually access the energy of the sun and you're using those life-giving photons to come and reset the cells of your body. And so it's very much a physical, but then again, we don't see it happening. And so for me, energy work is anything that we experience that we do not see, that we're able to move and shift. Like even our neurons in our brain have energy, little electric pulses that fire. So it's like the electric currents, the energetic currents that are flowing through all life and connecting with those and moving them. And I really love being able to dive into that. And it's just so delicious. I also do caution as well about the energetic entanglement, because anytime you do tune in for somebody and you do support them, you have the ability to pull their energy into you as well as your energy into them. And so making sure that you set up something to disconnect it, to return what's theirs, receive what's yours. I had an experience where I went to this healing circle years ago, and they had a modality where you would basically tune into an essence of a person in a group form. And it would have some things spoken or felt, and each person's intuitively working on a piece simultaneously for one set person. And I remember at the end of it, and this is after, like, I think it'd been like 12 or 14 years of me working with energy. So I was very clear when something wasn't mine and something was mine. And at the end, each person just grabs you by the hands and says, okay, sending you back what's yours and taking back what's mine. Thank you. And it was that fast. And I went home and I was so ill. I was sick. I was not okay. And I even had plans the next day and I had to cancel my plans. And so I messaged the person facilitating. I said, hey, we went really deep with this person. Like when I channel, like I feel every sensation in their body. It's as if it's my body. So I go deep. And I was like, I don't think it got released. And, and sometimes we can have things activate that are unhealed in us. But the response was, oh, in the 5 years I've done this, I've never had anybody have some type of cross-contamination ever. So this must be yours. Here's my program. And you can do my program, and then I'll help you heal your shadow. And I'm like, hold please. And then I reached out to healers that I've worked with and I trust. And I was like, hey, I'm fully open if this is my shit. 100%. Can you just tune in? And across the board, unrelated to each other, different modalities, different parts of the world. Nope. It's not yours. This is something that's coming through that didn't get disconnected. And I was like, hey, thanks. So now I'm going to go dive in and talk to spirit on how to disconnect. And I got some advice and was able to disconnect that deeper. So it's very important that we have some type of ritual that cleanses our vessel back up and helps us to be the only body in our body, because otherwise we get muddled and we can end up trying to heal things and work on things within ourselves for years. And it was never ours, because emotion and energy doesn't hold an identity the way we do. So the emotion of feeling shame or guilt feels the same in my body as it does in your body. So if I absorb your shame and guilt into my body and I feel shame and guilt, I'm not going to know that it's not mine unless I have these fail safes up. So just being very mindful of what you're tuning into and when you're tuning into it. And if you don't know, do a simple ritual that will cleanse it. Like I have, even if you just take some Himalayan salt and you put it with some coconut oil, maybe some yummy herbs and oils in a jar by your sink. And as you wash your hands, you wash with that. You're okay. I'm releasing any energy that I absorbed, releasing what is not mine, releasing, you watch it go down. Something that simple, or dusting yourself off, being like, hey, not mine, like something to tell your conscious mind, anything I picked up, I'm leaving here.
Yeah.
Not mine to deal with, not mine to take, because we have that ability. So to honor the ability by not being the garbage dump, it's just nice.
Yeah.
So those are probably my two biggest things, is like the permission and making sure you cleanse yourself, for sure.
Well, thank you for that information, because that was, again, really well put. I think you covered a lot of basis with that. And I think that we can all learn from that. Or even just remember if you think,
Remember.
it's
I
just
mean, sometimes I
good
forget, like I'm with a
reminder.
friend and they're going through something, and it's like, while we're having lunch, I'm getting all their stuff. And then I
Yeah.
don't realize, because I love them. Or even, especially with our family, like with my daughter being pregnant, I channel her all the time. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to disconnect this or not. I'm
Yeah.
like, do you got a pain right here? She's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, I'm helping you. And so, I mean, and it's now this joke, because I'm like, I wonder if I'm going to know when you're in labor before you know you're in labor.
That would be
So we'll see.
interesting.
I'm like, I'm okay with not feeling your labor pains, though. I really am.
Yeah. Yeah, those are pretty intense. Well, and it's also a good reminder, because I know that sometimes when I'm doing energy work, there's time, or do a ceremony, and then later on, maybe that night or the next morning, I'm like, oh, why is this energy still so intense? And all of a sudden it'll click, like, oh, I forgot to close space. I forgot to close, hang up the line.
Yeah, well, and I think everybody does that. Like, we had a beautiful ritual with a Mayan shaman, and we did a temazcal, where you go into this concrete igloo, and it's like a sweat lodge, but it's the Mayan culture. And we said goodnight. He was there at all of our villas, so it was on site. He left. 2 hours later, he shows back up, and I was like, "What are you doing here? Are you here for dinner?" Like, and he's like, "I forgot to close the space." And he had to come all the way back. He's like, I was feeling panicky and I was sweating and I was really anxious. And then all of a sudden there's like all these traffic things. And he's like, oh crap. And so here he's done this like his entire life.
Yeah.
And he still forgot to close the ceremonial space. And so I was like, cool, well, can I come help you? And so then I was grateful for his forgetfulness, because I was able to be part of that closing ceremony, where usually it's just him by himself. And then I was able to learn and witness and ask questions. And so, and just because you forget doesn't mean that you're not a good healer or you're not intuitive. It literally just means that you're human. And it's also really good sometimes to forget, because then you can remember how powerful the work is. Like, if it could affect you that way, how deep did you go? How beautiful it is. And as they're releasing, if you're able to feel it and have that connection still, it's just more of a validation of the beautiful work you're doing. So I celebrate that you forgot. You'd be like, "Oop, this is why it's important."
Yes. Yeah. All right. Well, is there anything, actually, I do want to ask one more question. Is there something, can you tell us about something that you struggle with?
Disconnecting from my daughter. I feel like I talk about my struggles all the time. Well, one thing that I've been really working on in the last several months is people pleasing. So I didn't even realize I was doing it because I thought I was just, that loving. And then I realized that there is this program that would play through of wanting to make sure everybody's happy, wanting to make sure they're getting everything they need, and not honoring that when somebody has a healing journey, that they still have their free choice. And me reaching out and giving them tools and wanting to do it for them. Sometimes that's a real battle, especially when I see somebody who's struggling or even suicidal. I want to go, ooh, let me just do this for you.
Yeah.
And that isn't my role. And, spirit says a hard no. So that definitely the balancing the line between what spirit says and being direct and kind and empowering others by being direct and kind versus going, oh, honey, let me hold your hand and do all the things for you, because I know how much feeling abandoned hurts. And so let me just be there for you. So I think that's been something that I've been really allowing myself to unravel deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's kind of funny because even now we have conversations all the time. Like my daughter and I, she had something with a family member, like a relative, around her baby coming, and just, and, it was petty stuff. It wasn't even a big deal, but there was enough there that I was like, okay, I'm going to come in and I'm going to say this and I'm going to do, and then I went, oh, that's right. I'm people pleasing, aren't I? And she's like, yep. And I'm like, what's really interesting is I have this people pleasing thing that I can now see has been playing in my whole life. I wasn't aware of it, but now I'm fully aware of it. And she has the, I just don't care. I'm like, isn't it interesting that you got the, I just don't care? And so sometimes you offend people like a lot because you don't care. But then I have the, here, I'll fix your offense. I'm like, isn't it interesting how this dynamic's going? And so I think with anything that we're working on or challenged with, that it's really beautiful when we can openly go, oh my gosh, I'm doing that again. Oh my gosh. And then asking other people and letting them know that you have that going on so that they can support you. And they can say, hey, that's your people pleasing showing up. I'm like, oh, that's right. Let's reprogram that. Let's reset that. That's just an old habit. And it gets to the point where it's just a habit. And so even after you heal things, it'll still pop up to show you where the habits were. And so for me, that's a really delicious thing that I love working on right now. Is just allowing myself to say what needs to be said, do what needs to be done, do what needs to be do. I also say those words. It's a challenge. It's okay. I've accepted that. Now everybody can feel better about themselves and their poor vocabulary sometimes. But doing what needs to be done, but with ultimate love and kindness. And just rather than conforming myself to please someone, to say, here's kindness and seeing who you are and knowing that you will move through this. And here's information, here's actions that you can do if you're willing to do the work behind it. So it's been really fun to watch dynamics of relationships change as I've shown up a little bit, just a little bit different. Sometimes just a little tiny tweak can change our whole experience.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing and for being vulnerable in such a beautiful and juicy conversation today. Is there anything else you want the audience to know before we are done?
I'm like, believe in yourself, let yourself go. It's okay to shed.
Yes.
So yes. Yeah. And then if you want that free resource, like that's why it's there. It was something that I originally charged for, and Spirit said, this is for everybody. This is the baseline. And so it's going to be free and it's just there for them. You can take that information and have a discussion with you, or you can reach out to me. It's just there for you. Because the more we can understand ourselves and what is ours and what isn't ours and what's from Spirit and what's not from Spirit, the easier it is for the rest of us, because we don't have people spinning out and then we have people sensitive to the spinning out. So it's actually selfish that I have that available. I'm like, open your gifts and then life is easier for all of us. Okay.
Yeah.
Or at least understand them and don't shame them.
Yes. Oh, yes. That's great advice. Well, I'm really excited to work with you the next time you're in Salt Lake and experience some of your beautiful gifts. And then also, if we can have the audience comment below and let us know if you're interested in doing a session that we could put together as a group, and we can go ahead and do that. So I just want to thank everyone for being here today, and I really encourage you to do the work and to find your gifts and to find your community and your tribe, even if it's just online with us. So thank you for being here. And again, this is Ellie with Journeys with Ellie, meeting you on your journey wherever you're at. Have a great day.